Thank you.
Well, let me turn back to Lee here for a few minutes, and I told him I was going to throw his questions that he had asked kind of back in his face, so to speak, and hear how Duncanville has dealt with kind of coming back after COVID. And I'll also say that I think the name choice, which was put on this meeting several months ago, is a mistake because, or at least maybe we need to erase post-COVID, the post part of that, because I think most of us are sensing that while it's maybe we're gathering in ways that we weren't before, there's still some significant challenges that that we have. And some of our churches actually are going back to not gathering and totally online again. I've heard of some of those in the last couple of weeks as well. So, and that's another thing about Texas is we're very diverse. And not just ethnically, it's church culture is very diverse. And so, what's happening in Perryton and McAllen and Mildred and Sugar Land and Mineral Wells and Duncanville and San Antonio, we're all over the map, literally, in the way that as churches we're able to respond. So I think for me, what I hope comes out of this is I hear some things from you that I can learn from. That might help me and my group, the group that I lead here in Frisco. But also it helps me to have an appreciation for who we are as Texas Baptists. And so don't feel like you don't have anything to offer, because you do. And we need to hear what's going on. And if God's using a certain method or a certain approach, then we want to hear that. Because none of us has it completely figured out. And each of our situations calls for different things. The big idea, though, is how our Sunday school classes and small groups are reforming and coming back. And so Lee's questions were related to, the first one really related to how they're organized and how we're maybe having to reorganize as people come back, because and Lee, I'll throw it to you and let you talk about what's happened at your place, and everybody else can chime in. But one of the questions was, should you consider reorganizing all your classes or groups at this point? And I think it's a really good question. And then what do you do with those that are dramatically different as far as their numbers? And so, and I know at our church, we've got some groups that just haven't come back. And so it's tough. So Lee, what have you faced? What answers have you found, just briefly? And then let's hear from these other guys.
When I put that on there, I think that was back in March or April or something. But technically, we came back for congregational worship a year ago in June, this past June. Our classes began to meet probably as y'all did on Zoom, those who could. Then we put a target about, it'd be a year ago this month in August, that we progressed to start coming back or migrating back to campus classes. And what we found was I lost some classes. They were our senior adult classes. I had several. We're probably on the older end yet. At the time, we were running around 400, 500 Sunday school, but still a little older church. And some of our senior adults, we learned, did not have internet service. They could not afford it, or did not have computers, did not use those things. And so, and they would not come back to campus either. So we have learned and have found we've lost some of our members, just could not connect anymore. Now, as we're back full stream now, we have merged some classes together on that end and have regrouped some, but we're not back where we were. And then in the middle-aged classes, we had several ready to come back, but they came back halfway. If a class running 15 or 20, maybe only 8 came back. The others would not touch the campus. They had their anxieties or fears or whatever it was. And so we went the hybrid route. We began to bought cameras for all the classes and monitors and screens, so they could actually have a class and invite those via Zoom in their homes to join, probably like y'all have done as well. But it was a slow process. Some, even to this day, we've been back a year now. And again, with the COVID situation, just began to get a little worse than what about 4 or 6 weeks ago. But April, May, and June, things were looking pretty good. We still had some that only half ever came back. And so we began to look at the idea of we need to merge some classes together. Or as you all have classes enrollment wise, you may have a class of 25 enrolled, 12 are active, maybe 10 or 12 or you never seen them. They haven't been touched during that period of not meeting. Some were the outreach to difficult. It was difficult to contact them. You couldn't make any visits. Nobody wants you in your home or anything. So we had just really been re-looking and reanalyzing. And so we have merged some classes. We have lost a couple. We have just reorganized some to take in maybe 2 classes together of their remnants, put them together. And then I have another 50% that stayed whole. They're doing just fine. But it's been an interesting challenge how to do that. How long do you wait to do it? You're dealing with so many people's feelings, and as you know, they're all over the map. Some act like nothing's ever happened. Some like it's the worst still in case, and you can't judge all that. You can't sit there and argue with them, whatever side you want to argue on. You just got to live with what you've got to minister and love them and try to work with them. So that's where we at. That's what brought the question along when I did that. So I'll stop at that point. You're on mute, David, too. So
y'all have brought some classes together and merged some. Yep. I've heard that from some other churches, partly because of the numbers, but also partly because leadership wasn't coming back. So teachers or whatever. Yeah. Somebody else. And I'm interested in some of you guys who are in smaller churches that might, whether you've experienced the same thing or whether everybody's pretty much together.
Well, I know we have experienced something very similar to Lee on our behalf. We've merged some of our classes together. We've done the hybrid thing. And I would never dream 2 years ago that I'd ever know how to do an OBS software or write a JavaScript and able to put all that stuff and push it onto our YouTube and Facebook channels. But that's what it's required us to do. For those of our senior adults who have stayed home and they're just now, well, within the last month, started to emerge out of their home and then having to be forced back in, I can tell a major difference, not only in their physical appearance that they've been neglected almost in somewhat way, but in their spiritual and their lack of fellowship too. They are starved for those kind of things. And so that's really the challenge for us, is trying to figure out what we're going to do. For us, we're in the middle of doing a sanctuary remodel, which probably isn't the best thing to do in the middle of a pandemic. Giving isn't probably where it should be, but this is what God has called us to do. So we're struggling also not only with the pandemic aspect, but being forced to worship out of our gym and not having the capacity to hold everybody either. So that has forced some of our senior adults to stay at home, where they might be more willing to come if we were in our sanctuary and those things as well. Luckily, our senior adult director has done a fantastic job of going and ministering to them, whether it's through phone call or doing kind of a goodie bag, a care package that they drop off that helps connect them not only to the fellowship of our church, but also she helps assist them. Her husband is an IT guy at his job, and so he helps kind of set up that connection for them, whether it's on a tablet, a phone, or their home computer, be able to connect in and participate in our worship. And so when we have people involved in doing that, whether it's in worship or in Sunday school, we try to have somebody who interacts with them in the worship service. If they comment on our worship service through Facebook or YouTube, it's almost like we have a welcome committee that's online present that welcomes them and asks in ways that they can minister to them in that regards as well. So it is challenging because we aren't a big metropolis church, and so finding more people to serve, it's the whole 20% asked to do 80% of the job type mentality. So we're asking some of our people who are already heavily burdened with tasks within our church to sometimes pick up one more thing. And so we're trying to shift. As a student pastor, technology is a friend of mine and a friend of those who I get to serve with. So it's been a neat way for me to integrate some of my students who use like OBS, which is a gaming platform for them, to pull them in to see how God has gifted them in using this software to be able to integrate and serve our church through preparing a presentation quality stuff for our church and our congregation that not only ministers to students, but it also ministers to all of our generations of our church.
Good. So you've found ways to make it work, it sounds like. But so with the older folks, we did one of these with senior adult ministers and others interested in that age demographic a couple of months ago, I guess, maybe a little more. And they were struggling to, churches of all sizes and places were really struggling to keep those connections. There was one, some of you know, Keith Lowry at First Richardson, and he said he's the only one I've heard who just lights up when you talk about Zoom and senior adults. It seems like everybody else is kind of like, it didn't work very well for us. But he says theirs actually took to it really well. I think they had some of their youth maybe who jumped in and helped them with that. So it's sort of an intergenerational approach to that. Somebody else, what have you seen, and where are you now? Is it like you're stuck, or have you found some solutions to push through this idea of reorganizing or not?
We didn't do reorganization because the church operates in connection groups or cell groups, life groups, small groups. So that allowed, I guess, the congregation, even though we're a small group, church, to continue, connecting with each other and making sure, if anybody was sick during the past year, that they were provided with some help, assistance, food, on and on. So I guess the connection groups, the cell groups, really served us very well during this past year. And that's how the church operates throughout the week, doing the discipleship and throughout the week in these connection groups. And it was just natural, that when families had needs, that they responded and the church responded. So that didn't change. The only thing that, of course, stopped was the Sunday services when we had to. But we're back. So that's my comment there.
Good.
I noticed several changes that the first was that many of our youth ministers now have a slash besides youth minister, and it says media consultant or media director. Just about everyone has moved into that role also. But what we're finding is that many of our churches are wanting to start again having a Sunday school at a building complex. Is that many of the teachers that were there before have decided to drop out. They're not going to teach anymore, but they've had a whole year of not doing Sunday school. So it's hard to get new people to come in to be workers, to be teachers in any of those classes again, and to retrain them. And so we've been working with you, David, and others, just trying to come up with ways to make things to begin having some training for those volunteers, which we've got to do. So that's what I'm noticing. Yeah,
I'm hearing the same thing, and I'll do a commercial at the end about one of the things we're trying to do, whether we are doing in October to help with that. So yeah. What solutions have you found, Richard? You're about to say something.
Very similar to what you're experiencing, being in the Northern Panhandle, a little bit more rural and more distance around us. So we're kind of on our own somewhat. It's been a difficult year for us. We just finished a sanctuary remodel. We started about this time last year. And so we had to move our services into our fellowship hall, which was a very a lot smaller area. And certainly everyone is concerned about the COVID issue. And it was really a struggle for us to try to accommodate sound and distancing and all that. And our community is very relational, very connected with one another. So it was very difficult for us not to have many of our activities where we gather together, such as our Wednesday night, Sunday night services. And so just before Easter, we finished up our remodel and was back in the sanctuary, and we actually held full services. I guess just shortly in the 1st of June last year. So we've always maintained some type of worship service on a Sunday morning. And so we were anxious to get in there. I think coming after the sanctuary remodel really brought some encouragement for us, because we were ready to get inside the sanctuary, to get outside of the fellowship hall. And it was really encouraging. And so we started seeing people started coming back and enjoying the visiting and the fellowship. Our numbers have not quite got back to what they were before the COVID situation. Some, I don't know if they're just still a little leery. I think sometimes they find the comfort that, we haven't gone to church for a while, and that's kind of hard to get back in it. We've not really lost, people as a result of COVID say we're not teaching. But it has provided somewhat of a convenience, I think, for them to say, hey, I'd like to look at some other things in life. And certainly when you live in an area like we do, a lot of athletics is, they drive. Our school district drives from here to Lubbock for a district ball game, which is 4 hours away. And so they have a lot of activities now in their life, and they begin to choose to do that. So we're still maintaining all of our Sunday school classes, our activities, and those have held up strong. The people have come together and initiated a lot of the Zoom meetings on their own, which was encouraging as we went through the COVID situation. We are going to start up our Wednesday activities the 8th of September, which means we have a meal. We have all of our children's activities, youth activities, adult Bible study, choir, and all those activities. And so everyone is really excited about that. What I found is there was that hunger of being together and having that fellowship time for us. And so it's been a struggle to try to maintain gathering for that purpose, but yet also being concerned about the spread. Our spread in Perryton County is a lot smaller compared to some areas, but yet it is still there. And so it's, you've got some that, it's there, it's true, COVID exists, but the other is, well, if it happens, it happens, And so a lot of personality issues have been a struggle for us. But as we start September, we're looking to kind of get things back started. We haven't really reorganized. I looking at some of our programs and our ministries and asking the question, what's the purpose? Is this a time for us to, something we've done for 3 decades, to reevaluate it and to see what, so we ask that question. And I'm a part of a culture and in an area of Texas that we've always done it that way, and it's really hard to make that change. And even our new staff, youth student pastor is struggling with that. We've always done this, And so to get us to come back and say, hey, let's look at our purpose again. What is our purpose? Is our purpose to maintain that activity, or is it to reach that demographic within our community, in our church? What do we need to do? And if it's different, let's do it differently. But it's really working through that mindset of our people, of what we're used to. When you live in this part of the world, you've got everything. You've got your garden set, and you plant it the same way every year. And it's hard to change to something new, because from Dallas to Perryton, we're about 5 to 10 years behind everything else that happens there. So what happens in Dallas 5 years ago is just now reaching us. And it was that way with the oil. When the oil busted, it took a while before it hit us as it was hitting the rest of the country.
Well, let me just warn you then, Richard, because 10 years ago this summer, we had like 80 or 90 days of 100+ weather. So I just telling you, if that's true. No, I think what?
It's sure a possibility. We've had a lot of 100-degree weathers in the last 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, well, we hadn't had much, but I think the point you bring up is one that I'm hearing all across the state, and that is a real need to get back to why do we do what we do? And so I think we've been, and somebody said in a group I was in a church last weekend, they have found themselves wondering if God has forced us to do some things through this that we would never have discovered otherwise. And I think there's probably some truth to that. But I think the big thing is it's shown us both some weaknesses, but also some strengths, in that the churches that have stayed strong, like yours, Victor, like you mentioned, are the ones that had groups that stayed together. And I mean, Teresa and I lead a group of young parents, and it was all last year. It was like, I'm going to Costco, who needs diapers? That's what we would see on text or on the Facebook page, that kind of thing. And so they were just taking care of each other through all this. And people who didn't have groups that were functioning before really found themselves left out. So whether it's a Sunday school model or small groups model, home groups model, I think that was one of the things that we've seen. And for some churches, that was a weakness exposed. But I think the idea of why do we even do Sunday school? We've been doing it for, well, Sunday school has been around for 230 something years. Lee could help me with the history, but it's not the same. It's not what it was in 1790. And it doesn't need to be the same tomorrow. So how we get to tomorrow and help convince folks is a real question. The other thing that comes to my mind is I really hope, I realize there's some contraction that may be taking place in some churches by necessity. I really hope that doesn't lead to a change in our outlook, in our focus with our groups ministries. You know, I'm thinking back to the good old days. You could accuse me of that, but I think the good old days could be today, because I think as we refocus our groups on discipleship and reaching people for Christ, then I think there's an opportunity to say, okay, so we've contracted, but let's not develop a mindset that says, okay, we're going to protect what we've got, but let's challenge people with this idea of, you know, we're moving forward. We're kingdom people. We have a mission. And so I won't preach on it, but I could. I hope that our pastors and leaders, I hope you guys continue to nurture and cultivate a spirit of, yeah, we've taken a hit here, but we're moving forward. And, you know, God's given us a calling to change our communities. So, well, yeah. So another one of Lee's questions was, what about the groups that really got attached to using Zoom? Ain't it time for them to come back now? I don't think those were your words, but I've heard those words expressed, because we've got some. In fact, our group is one of them. We're hybrid. I think we'll be hybrid for a while. We've got, in fact, we had another new baby born day before yesterday. So that's 3 couples in our group that have 2-month-olds or less, and not to mention the 1-year-olds and the 9-month-olds that they had before these came along. So those parents aren't ready to come back, and some others are not ready. We've got a couple of ladies who are pregnant. They're not ready to be in large groups right now. I think we may have some others who are holding off on the vaccine because they're trying to get pregnant. So, you know, good, bad, or indifferent, whatever your views are on that, there's still some hesitancy there. So what are you seeing there? Zoom pretty well gone for you guys, or is it still an option?
For us, it's still hybrid. We went back to having some in-person connection groups, but there's still some people with concerns, and so that's why we continue to provide the Zoom meetings. Yeah,
we're about 50-50 here, David. Thankfully, there was really only one class that cratered directly due to COVID, and that was our oldest senior adult class. Larry Yoho moved away, and the people that were covering for that class, there were 8 pre-COVID, 3 passed away, 2 went into the nursing home, and the final 3 just went to other classes. And so that was really our only class casualty. But I'd say we're about 50-50. One of the things that I didn't get it, going back a little bit to Lee's question, that we didn't always hit on, and I do think because there's room at the cross for all, we have a huge spectrum of people that approach things in a variety of ways, and we know about the divisions in our time. And I think with this second bout, I've seen there even be some greater divisions. Those that are tired of it, and they really are done. And then those that, for those of us, and we're in a very diverse area in Southwest Houston, that we were pretty all locked down and pretty, you know, everybody kind of behaved the way they thought that science and whatever you want to say the sources were, told them to. But then even some of those more middle of the ground people I see leaning one way or the other, just saying, no, we're done, or, oh, we've got to get back. We can't. And so I've had a few teachers that have gone back to Zoom only in the last month, which then the class gets frustrated because the teacher's not back in the room again. And so we're having to do a lot of hand holding of reminding people that if we ever expect there to be unity and peace in our world, it has to start with the church. I mean, this is the place where we have to provide grace because we're the ones that have received it. And so I think that's something that I'm challenged to try to show to my leaders and try to encourage my classes to then show to one another, is just that grace that we all need. And so as far as Zoom goes, I've told my leaders to leave it or use it if they need it. Basically, it's kind of a smoke 'em if you got 'em mentality. And so about half of them are still doing hybrid, and then I'll have leaders regularly say, hey, we haven't had anybody on Zoom in 6 weeks. Can I quit it? And I said, yeah, just make sure the class knows that it's available if they need it. And so I don't see a problem with leaving a computer turned on or something plugged into a TV and just seeing if somebody comes, because you never know. It's another open door into a ministry that for 200 years, for a while, there was the outreach arm of the church. And so this is just another open door into our church. And so Zoom doesn't bother me personally, but here I am, we're all, this is like preaching to the choir for Zoom. Here we all are on Zoom in the middle of the day. So those folks that had to live on Zoom and still are living on Zoom for their jobs, yeah, they got tired of it real fast. Because if they were doing it Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, please don't put my church online. But for my median and senior adults, maybe Keith and I go to the same senior adult place, but they loved Zoom. I mean, it was the way they got to see grandkids. It was the way they got to connect with one another. I mean, so I've got some senior adults that are still they just love getting on the Zoom machine. And so that's been a good thing. But I'd say we're about 50-50 Zoom and unZoom now.
So I had 1 week after we were supposedly back in person or hybrid, where I was the only person in the room, and I had about 5 or 6 couples online. And I'm thinking, all right, some of you are just being lazy today.
Yeah.
And then I thought, but would they have come if it hadn't been an option? And probably not. And
so that's the challenge. And then I think it's Tom Rainer in his post-COVID book, he calls them stragglers. Yeah. And that's something, if I had to ask a question, that would be my question, is what are we doing with the stragglers? I mean, back in October, when we came back to full church and groups, my 7-year-old looked at me after one Sunday and goes, Daddy, I hate church. And I said, wait, I'm sorry, what? And he goes, I like church on TV in my jammies. Can I have church on TV in my jammies? And I said, no, son, Dad works for the church. Sit down. But I mean, out of the mouths of babes, right? I mean, how many of our church? And so I feel like for us in Sugar Land, our core folks, whatever that number is, they are 90% back. And even the 10% that aren't physically back are still 10% connected. Now it's the, Rick Warren congregation, that outer circle that for us could be up to 1,000 people, that 200 or 300 of them would have been here every Sunday, or at least once every month. Those once a month are now probably once every 6 to 8 weeks. And those that came once a semester are gone entirely. We haven't even seen them yet. And so, I mean, that was the shocking thing, is our highest attended Sunday outside of Easter so far this year was August the 1st, because that's the Sunday church growth experts will tell you really need to be on your A game. I mean, that August the 1st, man, that is the Sunday. I mean, school didn't even start back for us for 2 weeks. I mean, so we've had up 250, 300 number shifts between Sundays. And I don't know. I mean, it's really the joke of, did everyone call each other up and say, I'm not going? Y'all don't go. Don't make me look bad. I mean, it is just kind of this shift, and we can blame it on COVID or that. But I really think it's a habit. We just we've changed some of our habits. And how do I communicate to my stragglers? It matters that you're here. Your family needs to be here. The group needs you. And so, I'm trying to get my leaders to keep reminding people how much the group changes every week, whether you're here or not.
So what are you doing with stragglers? It's a good question.
Nothing good yet. If I did, I would have already told you.
Yeah, no, that's for everybody.
Well, you know, I don't know about the stragglers, but on the Zooming, I think the Zooming as for class members is here to stay. I have found resistance if the teacher stays on Zoom. I don't see that being long lived. I think the patience wears out pretty fast. So
Showing up to church and watching them on TV is
yes, that's not a happy
challenge.
I'm still waiting to hear somebody say we've started a new Zoom group and that's all they do. And it's going to be that way forever. You know, I mean, because it's like our 33-year-old sat in on one of our very first Sundays when we led our group by Zoom. And he's watching over our shoulder. And when it's over, he says, it's about time you two got online, because they live there. And so I'm just wondering, what are the, you know, what are the prospects? We should have already been online and had a presence there, and we haven't done it. So Victor, you about to say something there?
Yeah, I was wondering about the question of what do we do with stragglers? Do we make a Zoom thing just for them, or you know what we've done with the women's and with the men's group? We made it in person only. We did not offer Zoom thing. I mean, if you really want to be part of this and really grow, and we know that I mean, it's a safe place to go to these homes, and if you know you're taking care of yourself, you know, you've been vaccinated, so on and so forth. I mean, it's safe to go and meet, right? So we made the women's and the men's group in person only. No Zoom opportunity.
Would you consider making a class just for vaccinated only?
No. But it's just the home, the host of that home, you know, who sets the I guess the expectations, you know, for those that go to his or their home, you know, is they, for example, one connection group, she's really picky and she puts a sign in the front door, you know, vaccinated and face mask required. You know, that's her home. You know, that's fine. I mean, that's people's home. They set the rules, you know, or who should attend. But for the women's and the men's, I mean, we know, I mean, that because we're adults, I mean, you have been vaccinated, and if you know you're feeling sick, you don't attend. You just stay home, right? So again, for those two groups, in person only, no Zoom.
Should you run the thermometer on their heads when they come in, take the temperature?
No, we don't. No.
We did for upward basketball last year, but not this year, Lee. Hey, David, one of the things that we did last year that we probably have I know we have neglected, is we did set up everyone that's in, and we call them ABFs, Adult Bible Fellowships. I think it's the term that, I don't know if you inherited it or not, David, but it's what it's been called as long as I've been here. And so everyone that was on one of those roles got put in we called them a connection group. And basically, just because we try to have all of our leaders, small group leaders, have InReach, but they don't. And so to assume they did, we last year put everyone in these groups. And so that was something that, especially during 2020, we made contacts, and you at least got a call until you told them quit calling. And so, I mean, there may be some opportunities from even some old fashioned, I mean, that's really what it was. It was the phone tree kind of, except we were calling you had 10 families that you called and you kept up with and checked in on once a month or once every 6 weeks and then reported back. And so, that's something that once things started coming back in person, we kind of let slide, but that might be creating straggler lists and treating those like we would a visitor prospect almost, and try to help them be connected that way. But no, that is something we're trying to come up with, and it's kind of really on a class by class basis on how they handle stragglers, those that just either will not or have not returned yet.
On stragglers, the other idea is a guest. I have found it harder to invite a person to be a guest on Zoom. I think primarily because they're not in present. You're in your home, they're in their home. I was wondering if y'all found some similar type challenges there.
We had some couples join us from other cities, and I mean,
we had that
friends of friends, but yeah.
About peer outreach, trying to get my neighbor to join or the guy at work or things. I just found it's harder for them to even make the invite because you're not there with them that Sunday morning at the TV monitor or whatever together.
Yeah. Yeah. Caleb, were you going to say something?
I've noticed for us, it seems like it's been easier for our people to invite people to, mainly when we were online only, be able to invite them to come be a part of our worship. And when they saw them log in onto Facebook or YouTube, they were able to connect and message with them privately and talk to them like that. So for us, that was a nice thing. I think it's something even people within our community that don't have a church, they know who we are. They know that we continually have that online presence, and so they can still see that with us. So inviting them to be in a Sunday school Zoom class, when we did that, they were interested. It seems like that was easier for them to do than to get their kids up, get them dressed, and come into an actual Sunday school class, and not have people, the awkwardness of meeting new people that they don't know, or sometimes they don't want to know. Maybe there's somebody that's in our community that goes to our church that somehow has offended them or made some awkward situation. And so it gives them that opportunity to kind of avoid that and still see the fellowship of our church. And then once that wall came down and we quit doing Zoom, they were more inclined to come and visit us. And we've actually seen more visitors since we've done away with Zoom visiting our church, and they haven't necessarily joined, but they've had that opportunity to come and feel more comfortable because they see some more people that they and avoided some people maybe too that they didn't want to see in that interim time, so to speak.
Yeah, we've seen some of the same people who joined online have started to come in person. And what I've noticed, we've got two couples that are prospects for our group, and we've contacted both of them, and the response is, well, we're backing off just a little for a while, but we'll be back. We have one couple that just fell off the face of the earth, and they would get all the class emails, and they were on Facebook and saw the posts there, what was going on and everything. But it was, as the leader, it was beyond the embarrassing point of, I haven't talked to this person in a long time, so I really don't want to call him or anything. So I emailed him actually 2 days ago, and he responded. And so we're meeting for coffee next week. But I think it's going to be those personal touches that I've heard some of the national gurus say, well, you're going to lose 20% of your people, so just don't worry about it. Go reach those other people who are out there. And I cringe at that because I don't think I'm not sure that's biblical. I don't think I've seen that passage anywhere. So I hope we'll empower those groups and classes to go after the people who have fallen off the face of the earth through this, and gently and lovingly bring them back. I hope that's what happens. Thanks for joining us today. I'm glad you were part of our discussion. Before we go, let me give you some heads up on some things that are coming up soon. Our next Discipleship Roundtable will take place on September 23rd, and we'll be talking about family ministry through the holidays. So Jennifer Howington, who's our childhood ministry specialist, and Corey Liebram, our youth and family ministry specialist, will be leading that. And so if you need some ideas for staying in touch with families through the holidays, with kids and parents, this would be a great opportunity for you to do that. And they'll get input, but they'll have some great ideas as well. So I hope you'll take part of that in that. And you can sign up for that, register for it at txb.org/roundtables. Another thing that's coming up in October, I know many of our churches, many of you have lost teachers. And so you're in the process of recruiting new teachers, and you need those new teachers to have some basic training. And so that's what we're going to do with them on October the 16th. It'll be on Zoom. Online. It doesn't cost anything, just a couple of hours of really basic training for new teachers primarily. If you've got others who need to just do a little catch up or dusting off some of their skills, that'd be great too. But typically your older, more experienced teachers who know what they're doing and doing a great job, this is not for them. This is for those new teachers who just need to know, how do I build a lesson plan? How do I create an atmosphere for the group to thrive? How do I include outreach and ministry as a part of our group? So that's what this will be for, and it's free online, but you do need to register, and you've got the the URL for that there. And then also, if you are a youth pastor or family pastor or really any age group, Conclave is for you now. It used to be primarily for youth ministers, but it's really expanded. And so all kinds of pastors take part in that. Even some senior pastors will come. Got a great slate of leaders, as you can see, who are going to be with them at First Baptist Richardson, October 11 through 13. And you can find that information on our website as well if you'd like to send someone or sign up for yourself. And then if you are, or if you have a discipleship pastor, minister of education, our Texas Baptist Discipleship Leaders Retreat this year has been postponed. It's normally in April. It'll be in April again next year in 22, but for this year we've postponed it to November 3 through 5. You see there, it'll be at T-Bar M in New Braunfels. Our guest will be Mike Bonham, and I'm excited because Mike wrote a book several years ago called Leading from the Second Chair, and so the whole topic will be second chair leadership. How do you lead when you're not the primary one in charge, when you're not the senior pastor? And so any second chair leaders on your church team would find this a really helpful retreat, and it's a great place to network with folks from around the state as well. So let me just say thanks for joining us again. Anytime that I can be of help to you or to your church or church leaders, would love to do that. Our discipleship team is ready to help. Jennifer, Corey, or I, any of the three of us would love to visit with you about ways that we might be able to help serve your church as you make disciples who make disciples. Thanks for being with us.